New reports and a new ruling, as it were, from a federal court says, hang on, Canadian government, you cannot make changes to the refugee healthcare system because for all sorts of reasons. I'm going to get my next guest, Candice Malcolm, for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to explain it to me. So there was sort of a cruel and unusual reference to it, that the feds made some changes to these refugee claims, and the court says, hang on, it's cruel and unusual. Did I have that right?
Right, yeah, the court ruling was just unbelievable. It doesn't really make any sense. So the interim federal health program, Adrian, it's a federal program, even though healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction, so it's supposed to be up to the provinces. But the feds come in and say, okay, when you're a refugee, we'll give you interim healthcare until you become a permanent resident and you can get healthcare. Well, you know, a lot of the refugees that were coming, this healthcare program gives them better healthcare than Canadians, goes above and beyond, giving them things like dental and healthcare.
Yeah, they were getting, as you rightly note, that well above and beyond what the average Canadian gets. They were getting eye, dental, hearing prescriptions. All of that was being covered, where for so many Canadians, as we both sadly know, Candice, that's not happening, and not even necessarily on the prescription side with our various provincial healthcare plans. They're not even covering that. So it was more about that. I want to put up the board. This is what Justice McTavish had to say with respect to what was going on here. The Canadian government has intentionally set out to make the lives of these disadvantaged individuals even more difficult than they already are, in an effort to force those who have sought the protection of this country to leave Canada more quickly and to deter others from coming here. I mean, that's very strong language. I understand, you know, we have these activist judges on the courts. I mean, it's hard to say anything other than that. But it's also important to note that no one was being denied, you know, critical care, because if you walk into an ER, you're going to get care.
Right. So the changes that the feds made were very minor. It wasn't against all refugees. It was just people who had made claims and been rejected. So once the court found that they were not refugees and were trying to get them to leave Canada, they had deportation orders out. It was those people, the people who were on their way out. They said, okay, we're not going to give them this extensive care because we don't want to give them incentives to keep coming back and appealing after appeal after appeal. So we'll say, you know, once you've been found by a court to not be a refugee, you just have to leave. You don't get this coverage. So that was the class of people. Those were the people who were getting rid of it. Everyone else was still going to get access. Yeah. It was just those people. And so, you know, Adrian, this is exactly what you said. An example of an activist judge saying, you know, these people are entitled to this entitlement. It's very hard to ever roll something back. But given the circumstances, this is a small group of refugees who aren't actually founded refugees.
Yeah, they're claimants.
They're claimants. Yeah, and a lot of times they're from countries like the United States. They're from safe countries.
Yeah.
They come to Canada, they put their arms up, they say I'm a refugee, and all of a sudden they get to go ahead of the queue, they get to go ahead of everybody else and get access to things that you and I and Canadian citizens don't have access to from taxpayers. It's ludicrous.
But you know how this is going to get played out, Candice. It's going to be, you know, by certain media, it's going to get played that yet another blow to Harper, yet another blow to this whole plan that they had to make cuts and reductions, because the headline, as you and I just talked about right from the get-go, was that the use of the cruel and unusual. I mean, that it doesn't dawn on anybody that where these claimants are coming from. You know, they're going to forget that aspect of it, that they may be Americans, Australians. I mean, hardly you know, difficult lives to be led in those types of countries.
Right. Anyone can come and get access. And it's, you know what it really does, Adrian, is it creates two classes of citizens. I used to live in the U.S. I moved back to Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen. Coming back, I had to wait 3 months in Ontario before I qualified for OHIP. Sure. But a refugee, they come in and they instantly get it. So they get a better treatment than a Canadian citizen. It doesn't make sense. The federal Conservatives were just making a smart move here, trying to save some taxpayer money, and instead it backfires and gets inflated as something that's somehow cruel and unusual, which it isn't. So, rightly so, Chris Alexander, the minister responsible, here's what he had to say. They are, in fact, going to appeal this, which I think is a good decision. He says, we will be appealing this decision. We remain committed to putting the interests of Canadians and genuine refugees first. Failed claimants and those from safe countries like the United States or Europe should not be entitled to better health care than Canadians receive. We will vigorously defend the interests of Canadian taxpayers and the integrity of our fair and generous refugee determination system. So that sort of says it all, Candice. But do you think that the message will get across, or there's always going to be that noisy group who get in front of the cameras, that write the op-eds and that say this, you know,
evil, mean conservative government is at it again?
Well, I think that's exactly the case. You know, a lot of the details get lost. So I think the headlines that come out are, oh, Canadians are cutting, or the feds are cutting service and these programs for refugees. It's not the case. It's a small select group of people who actually aren't refugees. So I think that what people do is read the facts, get the facts, and make sure that those get out. That, you know, maybe people are protesting on the street, but they're really conflating the message. And what this really is about is saving taxpayers money from people who are trying to scam the system, trying to get better services than you and I, and it's really just not fair. So
I would love to hear more, Candice, from those who are legitimate refugees and you know, speaking out against this. But I guess we'll have to wait for that. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.